Oshi No Ko's second season has just picked up, and you haven't already delved into the series, then now is the perfect time to give what might be the most misunderstood show a chance. The title might have a bit of a reputation at this point. There's the weird incest direction its fans seem to go, the hour-and-a-half opening movie which dominated conversation. But is it still worth the trip? Yeah, definitely, and this is why. The opening episode speedruns about 4 episodes worth of material, just because that's how much setup this series needs. This is a fantastic way to do it too, getting into the plot by week 2. If it had taken 4 weeks to get to this point, where Oshi No Ko has a completely different status quo, then this would have felt different. The series' opening is a heartbreaking episode. It's easy to look back on and kind of forget that half of it is just talking babies. The tone isn't just misery, there's much more here. If you haven't already seen the opening, it's best to go in as blind as you physically can be. That aside, let's take a look past that. Yeah, kind of is an Isekai. To a lot of people, that's not exactly a positive, especially when the setup for the Isekai sounds so wacky on the surface. A gynecologist idol fan that gets reincarnated as the son of his favourite artist, with a former teen patient as his sister. It's, better than it sounds. As a central driving force though, the Isekai thing isn't even all that important. At a certain point, the reincarnation is just driving a story arc, and one that's not the sole focus. It also handles the whole reincarnation thing in a more interesting way than a lot of its counterparts. There are moments where the protagonists are aware of how far they've gotten from their old lives. Aqua, in particular, has some semblance of how his age detaches him from his peers. He's got the mind and memories of an older man, yet he's drifting further and further away from his past life, and becoming more and more this newer person. Ruby's entire personality, on the other hand, seems informed by just how long she's been a teenager. She's had 2 goes at this period of her life, spending twice as long as a hormonal teenager than anyone should. She has the experience of a 30-year-old in total, with all the maturity of Peter Pan, stuck in a more childish place and more at home in a new life than Aqua. The Isekai mystery of where Aqua and Ruby come from in Ai's early life is the motivator for Aqua, but the arcs in Oshi No Ko are more of a mixed bag. The central mystery and driving plot for the show is Ai's background. It's not a murder mystery about her fate, but still a whodunit. Who is Aqua and Ruby's father? Aqua's main goal at first is to find this out. Over the first season, he's essentially lured into taking part in various entertainment projects in return for information, which keeps the Ai thread just close enough that it stays in mind. For the most part, discovering what happened to Ai is kept lingering. The first season doesn't make too much progress, but it does actually start to reveal more information at a decent pace further in. As the central conceit of the show is a little slow, it does mean we can end up quite in the weeds. Season 2 will likely tap out before we finish this thread too. There are much more entertaining distractions in this mystery along the way. On the distractions, 2 are fantastic plot lines. The first, the story of Aqua's progress through a teen dating reality show. It introduces us to an entire cast and eventually branches off into going into detail on one of these actresses, Akane, someone who has the ability to completely become a role and inhabit a person completely, but struggles with the more promotional side TV show editing leads to her being railroaded as the villain of the show, which leads to harassment, which escalates and takes us to some dark places. It's a plotline which invokes a lot of the same successes of that pilot movie. We're introduced to a character, get to an extreme low point in their story, and a resolution all within a short frame of time. And what a resolution. The episode drifts to focus entirely on Akane to tell the story this way, even changing viewpoints until Aqua re-enters, recontextualized entirely in how he relates to Akane by this point. For a short while, she becomes our protagonist. Oshi No Ko has a talent for building characters in shorter spaces. We don't need a full 13 weeks with Akane to get to know her. An episode achieves the emotional effect that you need. It's tightly crafted. So, Aqua having to go through an entire reality TV show just to get a tease about some information does feel like it's spinning the wheels. Well, at first, but Akane's plotline makes the production's progress much more interesting than the overarching thread we're currently following. It's all brought back together wonderfully, where Akane is motivated to do her trademark-heavy character research just to get closer to Aqua by choosing to play the role of someone he'd find the most desirable. In this case, Yeah, she takes the form of Ai at the end of the plotline, but she isn't aware of the connections. It's easy to get so caught up in the individual plots that you kind of forget you're digging into a wider mystery. It's a skillful way of structuring it, made all the better at the end of each turn, with an amazing ending theme drop. One fairly interesting thing is how far into the actual roughness of being an idol that it goes. This is a fairly topical thing, and the dark side of the idol industry isn't news. Some of the best anime ever have been on this subject, like Perfect Blue. But Oshi No Ko's approach is completely different. Outside of the idols themselves, we've got online gossips effect, an actress who feels burnt out even as a teenager, a director still living with his mother. Most people don't particularly seem to enjoy the industry that they're in, yet the desire to be there is pushing them to awful places. The whole tone is interested in delving into this darker side of things. Aqua's whole expert manipulator thing can get a little bit dicey. Occasionally it even feels like it's drifting into classroom of mid territory. Oshi No Ko largely toes the line though. Aqua is kept as a pretty well-rounded character in all. He isn't some all-knowing OP protagonist. He's much more relatable than your standard victim of truck con. Half of his feats are more work than Aspel, like spending literally years trying to get into Ai's phone. He can be a jerk, but with clear faults and issues, he's much more well-rounded as a character than most wish fulfillment protagonists are. Their age at reincarnation is kind of interesting too, for the contrast between the two of them. Aqua was an adult with no illusion how the world works. He had maturity, and especially as he gets involved in the idol's darker side, he has the awareness and knowledge of a fully grown man. He's navigating relations between teenagers with way more experience than any of them. Ruby, on the other hand, was still in love with the idea of being an idol. Aqua is great, but in episode 9 we start to get more of Ruby, and it's a breath of fresh air. This all brings us to the secondary protagonist. Ruby's attempt to restart her mother's old idol group is the B-plot for a while before it takes over fully. It does get a few moments of focus, like episode 5. It's where we meet Payon and actually get to have some fun with the idol concept. As much as the dark side is interesting, the balance with more enjoyable stuff is important too. This subplot is also where Kana ends up, a child actor we first meet in the opening episode. She attempts to start a rivalry plot early on with Aqua, but is basically ignored and forced into the B-plot instead. It's still great how much she thinks she's the main character. Kana's acting career is burnt out by the time she's a teenager. There's plenty of gravity in her reasons for joining an idol group, but something makes this plot a lot brighter. Oshi No Ko so often twists into the darker side of the subject material, but Ruby's approach to being an idol is very different to Aqua's approach to acting. She maintains an otaku enthusiasm that cuts through the darker side. We see the burgeoning group struggle to establish themselves, but their triumph by the end of the season sets how the brighter side of the lies behind idols is the core appeal of Oshi No Ko. It's the perfect example of how Ruby and Aqua's outlooks differ from the start. Aqua's plotline is more directly exploring the darker side of the entertainment industry, while Ruby optimistically angles to get in. One of the darker moments is Akane's climax, which is drawn from real life and tragic. The resolution with Ruby's performance shows something else important though. Both of the twins are yet to see through Ai's act or lie. Akane is a great example of how Aqua might be wrong about the business that he's in. There is no innate talent, it's all the product of work. Aqua is pretty solidly convinced he doesn't have the chops for entertainment, that he's lacking the raw talent that Ai has. But how much does anyone have innate talent here? Akane absolutely excels at grabbing a role and going into it through sheer work. We see Ruby has a strong knowledge about idols, which helps the group grow. None of this is given, it's earned. Even Aqua's acting seems premeditated, which it turns out Ai's entire persona kind of was too. Aqua might believe his co-workers run on some natural and god-given talent thanks to his idolization of Ai's appeal, but everyone else involved proves this isn't true. Where Oshi No Ko is most interesting is the difference between reality and a lie. Aqua thinks he's discovering the truth, but he is still completely enamored with the surface level lies of Ai. The idol industry creates a lot of joy for people, but bubbling under the surface is a darker side to this. Yet so many are still willing to work hard to enter it. There are contradictions within the idea of idols beyond the black and white experience. Okay, so one of the best features of a good number of episodes is Yasobi's Idol. It's maybe one of the most iconic recent openings, but the ending theme blitzing in with a real punch moment, it keeps you on the edge of your seat week after week. One of the most memorable is Akane's eye impression. It goes as far as her spontaneously developing star eyes, which, if you didn't know, can happen when you do a lot of research into playing a role. It's one of the best ending theme drops in the series, but that hype ending moment is something the show excels in. The ending theme doesn't play over the last scene in every episode, but those what it does, it's a huge hit moment. The show is constantly delving into the reality behind the glitzy lies of the entertainment industry, but in a way that never wallows in it. It's fun the whole way through. There's a million little touches of the animation that bring it alive, from detail to establishing stops, and the fluidity it uses in its key movements, and feels even more so in Season 2 so far. At the time of recording, we're a single episode into Season 2, and it feels like a must-watch already. Everything is stepped up, particularly the fun the show is having in animating the source material. There's extra flourish, colour, design, the interaction between Kana and other actors in the opening are stunning. Even Aqua's moody tendencies are more interesting, with this Death Note aura thing going on to show it visually. It's a step up. Season 2 is adapting some of the best material in Oshi No Ko. If it continues to match the quality we've seen so far, this is going to be a special few weeks.